Oh, thank you, Lauren. All right, we're recording it. We'll have this posted online for folks who aren't able to make it today. So I'm just going to give a brief update on activities that we've done over the last year. I'll hand it over to Tyler to do an update from the Soil and Water Conservation District on their activities the last year. And then a good part of the meeting I really want to have open for feedback from all of you. So that's really the point of these meetings, is to get ideas on future priorities to update our plans moving forward. And we'll also just have a little time for round robin if anyone has any other updates.
Hey, Annie, you might need to share your screen on the OWL. It looks like you're seeing the screen in person.
Okay, let's see here. You're not seeing the presentation at all?
No.
Okay, sorry.
No worries.
Let me.
Thanks. Yeah, I think you can just
share screen. And like just the screen, right? How's that, Lauren?
I can see the calendar invite, so I can see your computer. And okay. There's the presentation. It's not in presentation mode. I can see the slides on the left.
Okay. This is blocking me. How do I get up there?
In the bottom right, I think you can. Yep. Presentation will down a little.
Perfect. Got it. All right. Is that better, Lauren?
Yep. Good to go. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So there's our agenda, and if you can, Lauren, can you just put the copy of the agenda in the chat also for folks online? And then we will dive right in. So I don't really know if I minimize that. There we go. Okay. So the purpose of these meetings, we have local work group meetings every year. It's a chance for us to give any updates on the activities that we've been doing, and gather input from our local landowners, farmers, forest owners, and partners. So, and also just a chance to introduce any new programs we have, get it to kind of do a check-in on how we're doing, what we can do better, see ideas for priorities moving forward. And I also just like it as a chance for all of you to get together, connect, share ideas, and think about ways to collaborate. So folks who have been to my meetings before have probably seen this slide, but I like to just do it every year because it's the government and we have a lot of horrible acronyms, and I try not to throw them around lightly, but I probably will end up doing it. So we'll just do a brief overview of some of our Farm Bill programs. The Environmental Quality Incentives Program is one of our kind of flagship Farm Bill programs for cost share to farmers and ranchers and forest owners. In Oregon, we use a conservation implementation strategies as a way to focus that funding strategically. It also includes national initiatives like the High Tunnel Initiative, Organic Initiative, and Organic Transition Initiative. That was a new one just this last year. And starting just last year, we have a lot of funding coming from the Inflation Reduction Act, and that's filtering into our existing programs, including EQIP, as well as a number of other programs, Conservation Stewardship Program, our easements, and our CPP. So EQIP is one of our big kind of cost share funding programs. The other big one is the Conservation Stewardship Program, CSP. And that one is geared towards folks who have already been doing conservation on their land. It provides annual payments over a 5-year contract to maintain that level of stewardship that you already have there. And then there are enhancements that you can do to bring your conservation up to the next level. About 4 years ago, there was a new program, the EQIP Conservation Incentives Contracts, and that was sort of meant to act as a stepping stone between EQIP and CSP. So these are also 5-year contracts, but they include all of the EQIP practices. So you can actually be addressing resource concerns, but also doing management practices and have those annual payments. CREP, the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, is actually a program of the Farm Service Agency, but NRCS provides technical assistance on it, and it is provides annual rental payments to take marginal pasture land out of production to restore degraded riparian zones, streamside areas, or wetlands. And then the last one here is the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program. That includes a number of programs, but the ones that we see the most are the Wetland Reserve Easements and the Healthy Forest Reserve Program. So these are easement programs. Basically are trying to restore, protect, and enhance either wetlands, forests, through these conservation easements. Those can be permanent easements, or the wetland reserves can just be 30-year easements. And then just a few other programs. These are ones that haven't really been used in our area, but are available to us. And something that we might want to look at in the future. The Regional Conservation Partnership Program, RCPP, is really a partner-driven effort. So it's very similar to our conservation implementation strategies that we use in EQIP. But the idea here is that rather than NRCS kind of coming up with the idea and me pitching that to, you know, the state office and trying to get funding for it, it's really relying on a local partner to say, hey, this is a need that we have in this area. This is what we want to do. This is our idea for how to do it. And the partner really takes the lead. So they need to have the experience, expertise, capacity to manage a partnership and to actually manage those on the ground projects, and to do a lot of the outreach to producers and track the outcomes. You know, what are we actually seeing from these efforts? In the past, these have generally required a one-to-one match. That's not the case anymore. I think they're realizing that with the amount of federal funding that's become available, it's really hard to get enough match for all those programs. So I think that the match requirements are much less now, and I don't know exactly what level they're at now. Yeah, so there are active RCPPs in our basin, like down in the southwest area. So Douglas County, I think, has a couple, or maybe down in Jackson, Josephine County. And it's forestry efforts there. So they're working, their main partners are, I think Sustainable Northwest is the kind of nonprofit that's been the main lead there, but they're working very actively with Oregon Department of Forestry and other local partners. And there it's really wildfire risk. They're doing very large scale landscape scale, kind of working with BLM and Forest Service also to prioritize areas where they're doing fuels reduction. And that's really important for that kind of a project, because you know, you could treat one little thing here and one little thing here, but if you've got a huge fuel corridor down the middle, you're not really actually doing anything, right? So that's where that kind of a project has been really successful. And there's some other projects like that on the east side of the state that are like the Sage Grouse Initiative and other kind of wildlife habitat things, where it's, you want to look at a fairly large landscape scale to be able to address it.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
All the RCPs are listed online. Google it.
Yeah, they've got kind of descriptions and stuff
all
up
the
there.
RCPs around the globe, and then you can look up all specific ones for you.
And USDA is pretty much just providing the match. Is that the typical relationship?
Yeah, so there's funding coming from other sources, but
like a force multiplier.
yeah, but then NRCS is putting in money too to kind of get more land treated or whatever it is.
And it's specific to agricultural and forestry properties.
Correct.
Private, or does it also include public?
It's generally private. It's the same eligibility requirements that we have for our other programs. In some cases, that is public land. If it's, you know, if somebody has a grazing lease on public land, then that could be part of it. Yeah. The conservation innovation grants are, there's both national and state offerings every year, as well as on-farm trials. And these are an opportunity for you know, nonprofits, soil and water conservation districts, watershed councils to apply for funds to help kind of demonstrate either new or emerging technologies, innovative ways of applying existing conservation practices or kind of tweaks to them that will be more effective. So it's really on the ground and still needs to be linked to our programs and practices, but can be kind of, you know, like the, I don't know, pasture forage trials. I feel like that's kind of a good example of something that could work, where we're saying, hey, you know, we know that pasture planting, pasture renovation is a helpful, you know, for addressing forage needs as well as soil health and other things, but we don't know which species work for these specific areas, and we're going to do these trials to kind of show what works. So things like that could be a good offering for this. So I think I mentioned real briefly, Oregon has what we call a strategic approach to conservation. So this is the way that we implement our environmental quality incentives program are through these focus strategies. And the idea here is kind of like we were talking about with RCPP, is you can do a real scattershot approach and kind of, you know, do one project here for soil health and one project here for forestry and one project here for something else. But to see actual outcomes at a landscape scale, it's pretty difficult if you're doing it that way. And so we want to, you know, for 3 to 5 years, focus our efforts in one watershed or one particular resource concern in one area to try to really get some actual results that we can see, and then move on to another area. So in 2023, we had 5 active conservation implementation strategies in my service area. That included the Upper Yaquina Water Quality Strategy. That was a new one last year, as was the Sayusla Floodplain Reconnection Strategy. Some of our ongoing ones were the Forest Resistance and Resilience, that covers the 4-county area, the Forest Management Planning, it's basically all of Western Oregon, and the West Side Wildfire Recovery, and that was focused on areas that were affected by those 2020 Labor Day fires. And then I'm gonna dive into each of those here. But just at a glance, last year I had 17 EQIP applications. I was able to fund 12 of those for a total of 847,000 obligated. That was a lot more than I've done in the past. You know, my budget has been usually around the $400,000 range. So we were already starting to get some additional funding from the Inflation Reduction Act last year, and that's continuing for the next several years. But those were kind of distributed throughout the forest management plans, high tunnels, that wildfire recovery effort, the floodplain reconnection, and one each of the EQIP CIC and organic transition. And then we also had one application for the conservation stewardship program, which we were able to fund last year. So looking a little bit closer at those, the Upper Yaquina Water Quality CIS, this is a project in partnership with the Oregon Department of Agriculture's strategic implementation area in the Upper Yaquina. And that's Lincoln Soil and Water Conservation District has been the main partner on that, doing outreach to landowners in that area. And the resource concerns there is really water quality. So it's elevated temperatures and low dissolved oxygen, and in some areas, pathogens. So that's what we're trying to address through working with agricultural landowners in that area. So figuring out how to fence cattle or livestock out of streams, improve riparian areas so that they act as more effective buffers, and plant trees for more shade. That's kind of the basics there. We were just getting this project kind of off the ground last year, doing a lot of outreach with the Soil and Water Conservation District. We did get one application last year. We didn't end up funding it because we were still sort of in the planning stages, but we've got more applications this year and should be able to fund some of those, and seem like we're building momentum. So this will keep on going for another couple of years. Forest management planning. This is an opportunity for landowners, small woodland owners, to work with a technical service provider, a professional forester, to help them write a forest management plan for their property. And it's a 10-year plan. It's really geared toward whatever their goals are. If they're looking at timber production, it can include that. If they're really more concerned about wildlife habitat, recreation, whatever it is, that goes into the plan, and it's very comprehensive. Looks at all of the, you know, potential issues that they need to address and helps them lay it out and kind of break it out into pieces so that it doesn't seem as overwhelming of like, we have to do everything. It's like, no, okay, let's see, you know, what are we going to do in this, you know, first 2 to 3 years, and then what comes after that, and lay it out. And so once folks have that plan, then they can come to us to request cost share assistance for actually implementing it. So this has been a really great program for especially new landowners who haven't managed a forest, or sometimes folks, you know, who are transitioning, you know, ownership from an older family member and they haven't been as actively involved, to actually get a good plan in place and then be able to start working on stuff. So we had 4 applications or 4 contracts last year, and I've got, I think actually 6 this year. So we're continuing to fund those, and then those feed in really well into our strategy for addressing forest resistance and resilience. And the idea here is to improve kind of degraded forests where maybe it's a overstocked Doug fir monoculture, and you want to be able to go in and do some thinning, maybe do some planting to add different species, have multiple age classes, you know, address these different concerns so that you're not as at risk for disease or pest outbreak, drought issues, wildfire threat, and providing better wildlife habitat. We didn't have any contracts last year, but I have 7 applications this year, a lot of those out of those new forest management plans that we developed last year. And I think I'm going to be able to fund most of them this year between this general EQIP funding and the Inflation Reduction Act funding. That IRA funding fits in really well with this because it is focused on climate smart agriculture and forestry practices. So that's things that are either going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, a lot of energy conservation stuff, or store more carbon. So improving soil health to store carbon in the soil, or planting trees to store carbon in the trees. The West Side Wildfire Recovery, we did have 1 contract that was funded last year, and we were able to use the IRA funds for that. That was the Echo Mountain fire that, you know, swept through really hot and fast, killed almost everything, but didn't really burn it up. So there's a ton of standing dead material, which creates more of a wildfire hazard for the future and also makes it difficult for the forest to regenerate naturally. So we worked with the landowner that's got just shy of 100 acres up in the Otis area, and they were working on taking down hazard trees that were around, you know, structures, buildings, roads and stuff. And then, you know, removing a lot of that other material, treating it, either taking it offsite or treating it on site in order to prepare the area for planting. And so they've been able to start doing that, and it'll be a process over the next 5 years of working on chunks of land, but it's really great to see that forest being regenerated there. A new strategy that we had just this year is the local foods and climate resiliency strategy. This is focused on improving soil organic matter, plant productivity, and pollinator habitat on farms that are serving the local food shed. So this was really popular. Wallace kind of headed this up and did a whole lot of outreach at farmers markets and with Small Farms Conference and other things. And we had a lot of applications. So this was available throughout our basin. So the Southwest and Central Coast, Upper Willamette area. We had like $3.5 million worth of applications just for this pool. And we probably have, you know, 1/10 of that funding. So it's great to see the interest. I think that, you know, there will continue to be interest in this. And we hope to continue the strategy for several years. But we won't be able to fund everything this first year. We got to, you know, we have an assessment and ranking process that we use for all of our applications, and we'll be able to fund the top ranked.
If there's that much need or request for that? It seems like an important program. Is there a way for you guys to bring money from elsewhere to help support that?
We can try. Yeah, I think that this year, seeing the great response, then that kind of, yeah, puts us in mind for next year of like, where can we pull additional funds from? And sometimes there's, you know, we can request additional funds either from within the state, people who aren't using all of their budget, or nationally. But a lot of these projects don't necessarily qualify for the Inflation Reduction Act funding, unfortunately. So there's a lot of, you know, moving budgets around, trying to figure out which pots of money are work best for different strategies.
And the list of practices, it's like all different.
It's, yeah, there's a lot.
Is that program like scheduled to sunset? I mean, it seems like it would just like perpetually have legs kind of alongside G-Clip.
Yeah, it's
5 years.
Yeah, it's a 5-year strategy right now. In some cases, we've been able to extend those programs, or, you know, at the 5-year mark, maybe we rework it and say, okay, this is, you know, these are the types of projects that we mostly funded, you know, what are we getting out of those? This is where the need is. Maybe we narrow it down and focus on something else. So I think, you know, these are a lot of practices that have been available in subparts in some other strategies, but it's been nice to, basically it's a lot of the work that I think has happened under the organic initiative, but we don't have very many certified organic farms in our
It
area.
seems like a bigger tent in local foods.
Yeah.
Rather than like an organic.
Mhm. Yeah, so
That's
there's
tough.
definitely a lot of need and a lot of interest in this one, and I think it'll continue.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said it's not covered under the, which part isn't it covered under the climate?
Oh, so the Inflation Reduction Act funding has a specific subset of practices that it can fund. There are some practices here that could be covered, especially the grazing management stuff, like that definitely fits into it. And some of the cover cropping and mulching and crop rotation and stuff, that kind of stuff fits pretty well too. High tunnels are the one here that is very popular and is not eligible for the Inflation Reduction Act funding. There's a couple other little things, but yeah, so it depends on the
It seems interesting because if it's local foods, then it's already reducing greenhouse
right
effects because they're
transportation.
not
Yeah.
taking the foods anymore. So that's like one of the biggest
Mhm.
emitters, and that would be seems to me like this is the perfect plan for that.
Yeah.
maybe
So a
there's
lot
way
of-
to like, you know, to fill out stuff and
Yeah.
move it.
The rules for what practices get funded for the Inflation Reduction Act are made at the national
Right.
level, so we don't have control over that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can kind of tailor
Right.
our local strategies to try to fit into that as much as possible.
Can you share whether you got any applications for this program in Lincoln County?
I did. I got, oh man. I think I ended up getting 8.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
So that was Lincoln and Lane,
Mhm.
mostly Lincoln though. And I think I will be able to fund at least 1 or 2 of those this year. But again, these can roll over to next year, so we can keep on working with those folks. You know, continue technical assistance to them in the meantime, and then resubmit for next year. Hopefully we have more funding then.
Amy, I see water harvesting catchment is on there.
Yes.
I haven't seen that on many other initiatives. Is it part of others as well? Just because we're running all these workshops right now, it would be nice to know if there's implementation
Resources
on it.
available.
Yeah, what they are.
I can't remember off the top of my head whether it's in the Upper Yaquina strategy. I don't think it is. Yeah, I don't think we have been funding those.
We
right?
typically use the roof runoff Truxters 558 practice.
Yes.
Is kind of what we always use. We won't ever get into water harvest catchment 636 because for engineering, it's better to use 558. And the reason why I included water harvest catchment in this strategy was anytime we're doing things with high tunnel and you're putting on you're like trying to capture the water, then that's that would be the only instance when you would use 636 in just that one scenario. Because you can buy kits that have the gutters attached.
Yeah.
And we have a payment scenario for that. So that was the reason why I added the 636.
So that's something that when people are applying for high tunnels, they could think about as well, potentially.
Yeah, if they want to include that in the.
Yeah, and that's typically linked with, if they're trying to capture the word for like a grazing kind of, or like animals.
Yeah, for
Because I mean, you wouldn't be able to do it for like irrigating crops, right? But because you wouldn't.
You can, some folks are, yeah, it depends on what kind of crops and how much water you really need, because it's just.
You just all you wouldn't have.
Yeah, you need a lot of storage.
So Wallace, the engineering requirements for 636 are greater, is that correct? And so like, that's why for most projects.
No, just 558 is just a better practice, and it's the standard we always use.
Yeah.
And then 636 is like a newer one that we would only use in a certain scenario.
Hi, this is Kelly. Actually, if I could jump in real quick. The 558 practice is what we typically use to collect rainwater from existing roofs. 636 would be more appropriate if you had to build a roof to collect water from, and that's typically more used in like Eastern or Central Oregon when they build those little roofs to create a guzzler for like wildlife type of scenarios. So in Western Oregon, I think we'd be using the 558 practice more to capture rainwater.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that before I move on? Okay. So Inflation Reduction Act, we've talked about this a lot. This year, the way the EQIP rolled out for the IRA was in these 6 pools. So there was forest land, cropland, rangeland, pasture land, energy, and animal feeding operations. And we'll have, different funding going to each of those. And like I said, this will be available for at least the next 3 years. Is that right, Wallace? You remember?
Whenever we get that new farm bill.
I think we got 3 more years of the IRA funding coming. So the high tunnels have been a popular program. I get, usually 4 or 5 applications every year. We've funded 4 of them last year, got 6 applications this year. And like I was saying, this kind of fits into the local food strategy this year. So I probably will only get to fund 1 of my high tunnels this year, but we'll push those applications forward and we can consider them again next year. Hopefully we can get some more funding there. Organic initiative, we haven't used a whole lot here. I did have 1 application last year that rolled forward to this year. Organic Transition Initiative was a new program that rolled out last year. And the idea is to help folks who are not certified organic currently, but would like to, in that 3-year period of their transitioning to organic certification, kind of coming up with their records management system sort of that they're going to need for the organic system plan, but making sure that all of the components for the organic system plan are in place. They're doing nutrient management. If they have livestock, they're doing prescribed grazing, soil management, cover crops and crop rotation. They need some kind of buffers or borders so we can help with hedgerow planting or something like that. Just kind of getting all of that lined up and helping them along the way. The conservation incentive contracts in our area, we've been focusing this funding on pasture land. And so it's really geared towards prescribed grazing and nutrient management to improve, the soil health, improve forage quality and quantity, and improve water quality. So we're not having sediment or, manure washing off into streams. And we had 1 contract funded last year that was down in Lane County. And she was, doing exactly that, putting in some riparian fencing and cross fencing to help with a prescribed grazing plan, doing some weed management and a little bit of pasture planting. Conservation Stewardship Program. Again, these are the 5-year contracts that have annual payments as well as enhancements. I have 3 active contracts right now that are all in Lane County, forestry, and then we just had 1 new one last year in Lincoln County. And some of the practices or enhancements that are there, it's a lot of like the wildlife habitat management, coming up with a plan so that it includes all of the possible activities that you can be doing on the property to meet your wildlife habitat goals. They are doing some tree and shrub planting for wildlife food. In this case, it's for beaver habitat. So planting willows and other native shrubs to enhance beaver habitat. Increasing on-site carbon storage. That's really kind of reworking their forest management plan to make sure that they're managing slash without burning as much as possible, and creating reserve areas where they're going to be like no cut areas, kind of like allowing that to be a carbon storage area. Cultural plantings, in this case, they're working with the tribe on some hazel plantings and doing cultural management. And then the summer roosting habitat for native forest dwelling bat species, that was looking at doing kind of a snag inventory and then doing some snag creation in areas where there weren't many snags naturally. CREP, the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. As I said, this is the Farm Service Agency's program, but there's some funding available from OWEB, the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, and then technical assistance from NRCS, Oregon Department of Forestry, the districts and watershed councils. This is available across the state. There's an option of either 10 or 15-year contracts, and it's really to restore, maintain, and enhance streamside areas and agricultural lands to benefit fish, wildlife, and water quality. We have 6 active contracts in Lincoln County and 6 in Lane. We haven't had a lot of activity in this area because we don't have a CREP technician, and that's something that is available to watershed councils or soil and water conservation districts if they want to apply for web funding, right?
As of April 30th.
Yeah, so there's a solicitation out right now. I think it comes out every 2 years.
Yep.
And there's been interest by the district in the past. They've had a lot of staff turnover and it hasn't been the right time, but thinking about maybe tackling that this year. And that would increase our capacity to do it because I don't have a ton of time to, do a lot of outreach and try to bring folks along. I do it as much as I can. And if folks are interested, I can provide the information and link them up with Farm Service Agency. But and then our last 2 easement programs, the Healthy Forest Reserve Program. We have 4 active contracts down in Lane County, Western Lane County. These are permanent easements, over 680 acres protected. And the goals there are habitat for northern spotted owl and carbon sequestration. So they're working on developing those into mature old growth type forests, but they can still actively manage them. So they have harvests that they're allowed to do, within the sideboards of the easement. Every 10 years or so, they can do an entry and harvest some material to kind of keep their management going. And the wetland reserve easements, we have 2 active easements in West Lane County down in the Sayusla area. Those are both tidal wetlands. And that's sort of a focus that we've been trying to think about how to do more outreach to landowners who have tidal wetlands, because I think that's a good fit for this program. And I did develop a new little flyer here. I've got electronic copies available. I can send those out to anybody who's interested, and there's paper copies back here, but it's just meant to kind of break it down better for landowners of what this program means, why we have it, and how it could benefit them. And that is all I've got. So I can take more questions now. We've got time for questions later. I will line up Tyler here. Oh gosh. Don't crypt.
Looks like Dane has a question.
Yeah, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, this will just be real quick. I know you're setting up there. I'm just curious, this is just for my own curiosity. Any applications coming in or on your radar about Oregon ash? I'm just curious in the valley if anyone's thinking about that or applying for any of those kind of things.
I haven't heard anything here locally. I know that we've talked about it as a basin, and it is, you know, there's a few properties where I see ash in our area, but for the most part, it's more over in the valley. I'm hoping that we're isolated enough where we have it that we might not get hit by the boar, or it'll take longer to hit us. But I haven't, we've talked about whether we wanted to kind of develop a strategy to sort of just have on the shelf and be able to roll it out if and when we need it. And I don't know that that's happened yet. But I think it would be probably more focused in like Benton, Lynn, Lane County area, I would imagine. All right.
It seems like where I see it in at least in the sludge space, it's like in like creek bottoms and things, and it's a really low density.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's other tree species, both
exactly
and or deciduous species that are like in that space with it.
And
so I can imagine like there goes the ash. But
you'll have cottonwoods or willows or other stuff.
Property owners might not notice it, but I mean, it'd be interesting to know from like ODA's perspective where this stuff is.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, when that headline came out a couple of years ago, I was kind of like, oh, well, like, what will the impact be? We can't. It's not like we have like monoculture.
Yeah, we don't have those ash swales that like that's only
in the Midwest. You know, where they've been dealing with emerald ash borer for a long time. You know, a lot of municipalities have just like all the boulevard trees were ash.
Right
after sudden oak death was, you know, so they replaced it with ash.
And now all that's going on.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, here we go again. 30 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, you know, urban forestries. I barely noticed the ash trees.
We noticed them more like in the upper Uquina, kind of out further.
When you really get over closer to Summit.
We are planning on planting some ashes there, so we are trying to strategically plant them where they may fit, but you know, we'll monitor and see what happens to those trees.
Yeah, with other species.
Like bring those into the
right.
landscape, being like,
where
are they coming from?
Yeah. I've had like 4 or 5 in a pot that grew together about 10 years ago. I never planted them, so they're safe and healthy. They're still alive. They become one and they live in the pot.
All right, I will do a quick review for those of you that came to the annual meeting. It's the same set of slides, but I'll be much faster. So our year in review is generally from June to June. So I will catch you up with some of the things we did this last summer and this last fall in 2023, and then kind of where we're heading. Gonna skip over some of the financial things. I guess it is kind of interesting to look at this. Seeing our funding from the Department of Agriculture is a big one there. So we do receive base funding from ODA to implement water quality, ag water quality, the ag water quality management area plan, and our different initiatives within that. So kind of interesting. The mission of the district, a few different photos from partner events, and then some different project sites. I'm just going to head down by basin and give you a quick review from North County all the way down south. So we recently stepped into the Salmon River and Devil's Lake area with the Salmon, am I going to forget their name? Salmon Drift Watershed Council, kind of, I don't want to say folded, but was absorbed by the Mid-Coast Watersheds Council. And so we've been divvying up some of their previous tasks, including outreach up there and then some implementation that we're working on. So we're currently working on the ODFW Salmon River Hatchery. It's going to be about, we thought 6.7 acres, and it has since expanded. One of the properties that we inherited this project, we thought was ODFW. And then when I started getting into it, it turns out it's an ODOT property that has livestock on it that are currently going into the creek. So our budget is changing. It's looking like we're going to add about 1 acre to that 6.7. And then we also are going to be doing about 600 feet of livestock exclusion fencing to keep those animals off the creek.
Transportation livestock.
Yeah.
Horses.
Yeah, they lease the land for the livestock. So, yeah, I was very surprised, but everybody was on board, which was nice and made things go smoothly to get this continuing. This year, we have done about 2.5 acres of the restoration up there in collaboration with ODFW. And then also we are using some US Forest Service funds to help us with some noxious weed treatment up there as well, primarily for yellow archangel and some knotweed, and then policeman's helmet. We also, I didn't mention much up there, but we also are doing some work, outreach and such through the Oregon Department of Agricultural Ag Water Quality workshop series. So we've got a couple of noxious weeds and pest management workshops that we're doing, trying to get folks aware of how pest management strategies affect water quality. So those are coming up later this month. We also are working up there on some pollinator meadow work, and we will be doing a riparian restoration workshop with some agricultural partners in the Siletz Bay National Wildlife Refuge. Continue on in the Siletz. So the Siletz is actually our focus area. So within that funding from the Department of Agriculture, we have a subset of funds that we can actually use to get work done. The rest of it is all for outreach and technical assistance. So we did inherit the Schooner Creek riparian restoration project. We are completing about 2 acres. The entire project is over 10 acres. It has been trials and tribulations learning on this one. There's a lot of livestock herbivory that was unanticipated and unknown by us when we inherited this project. So we're trying the best we can with the circumstances we have. But there's a lot more work to do in Schooner Creek, and we're also partnering with Lincoln City in their drinking water protection plan work that they're doing up there to do some riparian restoration and other weeds work. Long Prairie finished out 7.3, almost 7.5 acres of riparian restoration. Looks really good the last time we went out there. The trees are coming up. It's kind of fun. Our partners at Mid-Coast Watersheds Council are doing work on Sam's Creek, which is right there. So they pass by our plantings and give us an update every so often, which is nice. 2 of our active ones right now, Euchre Creek riparian restoration, about 5 acres. Great project. It's an interesting one because the riparian area is a terrace. So much of the riparian area is about 20 feet above the stream, but it's just a sheer cliff with 2 access points. So it's a little bit different than our usual projects, just in how we plant and what we're planting, but it's going very well. We're continuing with some willow staking after the drought last year. A lot of the shrubs did not do so well, so we're infilling with that. The trees still look pretty good, but we also are working with them, Sarah, on a stakeholder engagement workshop, which we held last year. We are also propagating snowberry and Nootka rose, which we give to our partners up north, and then they grow them out and end up giving them to partners. This last year, we gave them about 400 snowberry, and then we ended up buying all of it back from them. So it went to Tillamook and then came back, which we're doing again this year. So really excited about that. We are using some of our focus area funding to help Sarah with some silviculture practices that she's implementing in her pasture area that was not included. She also has an ephemeral stream that runs on the, what would that be, the east side of her property, far end of her property, that we are going to be doing some willow staking and some planting as well. That side, it will be water quality focused, but there's also beaver and elk over there. So habitat as well will be a main focus. Euchre Creek, continuing on the Siletz stakeholder engagement workshops. We've had several of those in the last year. Pasture borders, our pest management workshops, which I just talked about, we're replicating those up north. They were really successful. OSU Extension, Casey Buell is a great presenter. She's very knowledgeable and funny. She'll be presenting at the end of this month. For those of you that need continuing education credits for your pesticide applicator license, we do offer continuing education credits at those workshops. Yeah.
Thanks.
For the remainder of this grant, we actually just got approval from OWEB, the grants based on the Coho business plan. So when someone wrote this before my time, it was meant to focus on the Coho business plan and strategic areas for restoration and uplift. That Coho business plan still isn't out yet. So we're just kind of going as we can, trying to focus our efforts in the Silettes. We do have a couple river floats that just got approved. So if you're looking for some fun things to do this summer, we're going to be floating the Silettes, talking about cold water refugia and taking some water quality samples as well. This one, we have another year of funding on our Silettes BMP project. So this is for best management practices on agricultural lands that address water quality. We were able to work with the Walker Farms on a heavy use area, which got installed right before their sheep were knee deep in water. So everybody was happy about that. But we do have about $10,000 more that we're looking to spend. So if anybody knows a farmer in the Silettes that needs some help with, gutters or manure storage facilities, anything related to agricultural water quality, please let me know, because I would rather see that money get into the community than us having to give it back.
Do you have a handout or write up of that at all?
I don't have a handout, but I can get you something.
Fair.
Yeah. As I said, the focus area for us is the Silettes. An interesting thing about this, because it is our focus area, 82% of it is zoned for timber. So ag is not, our biggest contributor in this, and also not the largest by far by land, but it is the largest agricultural zone that we have, or watershed we have within the county and within our area, which is why we keep on doing the focus area. As part of this, there's kind of the steps that ODA requires you to take to assess conditions, contact landowners, provide technical assistance, and then we have to do an assessment of those measures. This has come in the form of vegetation assessments of the riparian area, and we've switched a little bit to taking water quality samples, just because the vegetation assessment has been updated a couple times, and we're finding that that is not the most useful tool for us currently. Going to skip over this one. We did some work with the Oregon Health Authority on Silettes turbidity threshold monitoring. As I said, we were moving away from the vegetation assessment, and this is in part because of projects like this, where we took some monitoring data and then we were like, we don't have any more monitoring money to continue this. So our focus area funds are now taking the place of some of our other grant funding to provide us with the money and time that we need to do some water quality sampling, which I think is also really opportune with the new forest accord that has come into place. We're doing some sampling up at Moonshine Park, which is the lowest extent of that industrial timberland before we get into our, private residential homes and our ag land. So it gives us a good idea of what some of our background levels are. All right, we're out of the Silettes. Heading down south to the Yaquina. We have our Upper Yaquina Strategic Implementation Area. Annie has covered this a bit, but this is a 4-year project that we are currently, it does not go through 2025. It has been extended because of COVID, and there was some turnover at the district as well. So things are going very well in our Upper Yaquina SIA right now. So we do have 4 different landowner projects that recently received funding through the Department of Agriculture's small grant program, which is new. We did submit those 4 projects to OWEB, and we were recommended for funding, but it was very low ranking. So we're going to be figuring out this grant again and resubmitting in April with the hopes to get some additional funding to continue this implementation. As part of our SIA, we also received funding from the Department of Agriculture to do water quality monitoring. So we're heading out every 2 weeks to take different samples. So we're testing total nitrogen, phosphorus, suspended solids, turbidity, temperature, DO, and bacteria. Really interesting stuff. This little That's our little water quality sealer. You pour the reagent and such in, you put it in the incubator, and then it comes out and you get the different levels of bacteria, which is a good indicator for us in these different stream reaches of like, okay, we see a lot of bacteria from here to here. We can focus our outreach and engagement there. We also have technical assistance in grant writing. As I've said, we work with many partners, many of you, to write grants for ag water quality, specifically in the Yaquina. Moving along to the ALSI. The ALSI right now, the district is primarily working in the ALSI on noxious weeds. We have funding through CPRCD to do some work on knotweed, policeman's helmet, yellow flag iris, lesser celandine, old man's beard, and one other. But these are just continuously going. That's the Title II weeds, sorry, on the right. So this project continues going on and on. I just sent an email to a bunch of partners and previous landowners that worked with us for us to go treat those weeds. As part of that, we also, again, will be floating rivers this year. So if anybody wants to float, we take GPS points and then we contact the landowners to talk to them about different treatment options. The other thing in the ALSI that we have quite a bit of right now and is a moving and morphing target is our USFS Good Neighbor Agreement. We work with Matt Smith over at the Siuslaw National Forest, and we are assisting with about 1,000 acres of land that we're assisting treating and monitoring for noxious weeds. I already told you about the CPRCD. We also do work with the Oregon Parks and Rec Department. We did last year for yellow flag iris. We just did the surveys. I believe they went back into treatment themselves, but in the past we have done both as well. Another kayaking opportunity for volunteers if you want to go look for yellow flag iris in Beaver Creek. All right, we're moving down to Yachats. This is our longest running monitoring project. The Yachats Volunteer Temperature Monitoring Program. So we have 3 different locations. We've had some interest from other landowners to actually expand this, but we don't have funding to do so yet. But we would like to expand this to see more parameters than just temperature. Dissolved oxygen is an easy one in some ways for us because it's just putting in the logger and checking on it. But those DO loggers run about $1,400 to $1,800. So they're not cheap by any means. But we will continue doing this. We head out in May and then we grab the loggers in October.
It is cheaper than having staff run out there with the thermometer. Take it.
Countywide, we do participate in the Mid-Coast Water Planning Partnership and have been doing so as a technical assistance provider, primarily again on that agricultural water quality concerns and providing input there as we can. We also are serving, I'm working with Lincoln City, the city of Toledo, Yachats, and now the city of Newport on their drinking water protection plans as well, which is there. For some of these, there's more agricultural land than others, but I think it's a good opportunity again for us to provide input on potential environmental contaminants and how they affect our drinking water sources. Last one we've got our HAFA program. So the district has been kind of slowly expanding our work on the Oregon silver spot butterfly. We inherited a program from the Nature Conservancy down in Lane County, which we continue to work on to provide habitat restoration. For the Oregon silver spot butterfly, we did just complete that about 0.4 acres of meadow restoration down there. And we just signed 2 additional contracts, which will expand that to 1 acre next year, just on those meadows. We have a newer program, the Habitat Corridor program that got started last year as well. That is for private landowners in Yachats and in Newport within the flyway of Yaquina Head. So about 4 miles from Yaquina Head, north and south, and then about half a mile from the coast. Private landowners can convert their yards, 500 square feet to 1/4 of an acre into pollinator meadow habitat. So with that, we provide them with the technical assistance. We provide them with some site preparation. We do ask for some help on that. We purchase all the plants and then we also get them installed. From there, it's up to the landowner to maintain them and we just come back and do our annual monitoring. All right, talked a lot. The NWQI, so this is one that we've been working with NRCS and have funding to do a source water protection area assessment of the Silettes. That project is coming to a close at the end of this month. And we are frantically working to get it done. But we have 3 months to get our final reports in. So project partners anticipate getting an email probably by the end of the month with some of the reports and sections that we're looking to get some information on. But the next steps of this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Annie, is we will submit this to NRCS for review, and there is an outreach plan that is required at the end of this. And we're going to hopefully be going and getting funding for the outreach component of that. Again, there's the Silette source water area. It's been a little bit difficult on this project because that source water area does not represent the entire Silettes basin. And most of the information you're going to find about the Silettes is the entire basin. So we're trying to parse it down to just that source water area and specifically the agricultural effects on the source water area and a little bit of forestry, but we're not getting into it too much because NRCS doesn't work with industrial timber companies. So it is, going to talk about opportunities for small woodland owners that may be available.
Does NRCS work with municipality?
No. Yeah, well, I mean, it could be like in a roundabout way through another partner or something, but they're not, municipalities aren't eligible entities themselves. Yeah.
I think we've asked for.
They need you greatly, but yeah.
I think we've asked for forest management plans for some of our drinking water providers are looking at acquiring their watersheds, which is fantastic, but they need some help, writing these plans and knowing how to actually take care of the land once they acquire it.
Or they have,
a
city. That was the one I was
Put it
thinking.
into a private landowner's name.
Yeah.
15 years or something.
Yeah. Outreach and engagement. I think I've talked a little bit about this, but there's a flyer. I've got more over there, but we have quite a few workshops, 7 of them coming up this spring. So that's just a list of them. You can also find all that information on the Oregon Coast Community College Catch the Wave publication, which will be sent to all of everybody in the county. It's also online. You'll find all of our workshops on the 3rd page, which is pretty exciting. Restoration projects, as I said, we've got quite a few things going on. We're working with Lincoln County Parks to do some riparian restoration in the Silettes. The Upper Uquina SIA, we are continuing to apply for funding there. We just applied for funding for the Oregon Silver Spot Butterfly Newport Meadow restoration at Camp Gray and at Sandmore Park. So we're working with a couple partners there. We've applied, and then the city has applied to CTSI, to the tribe as well. South County Pollinator Meadow Restoration just submitted another grant for that for implementation. And the Yachats River Riparian Restoration, we actually are going to be tabling for another year to try and get the logistics of that all smoothed out. That's it. Any questions? Great. Thanks.
Thank you, Tyler. Great. So I think are running a little bit behind, but I'm not worried. We had some good discussion earlier. Jumping back in, here we go. So I'm not going to really spend much time on this. I just wanted to mention that we do have other agencies within our department who have funding available to small farms, forest land owners for a variety of programs. FSA, the Farm Service Agency, does a lot of disaster and emergency assistance. They had assistance available to livestock producers last year after the drought. I'm not sure whether they've been doing anything for related to the ice storms this year, but a lot of different relief programs. They've got farm loans, crop insurance, and the organic certification cost share program is a good one for anyone who actually is certified organic. They've got a program to help pay those fees for the recertification. And then rural development has grants, and there's a value added producer grant that's kind of probably the most applicable to small farms. But both of those offices are over in the Tangent Service Center, and I've got contact information here. You can look them up online pretty easily. All right, so this is the part where I would really love to get input from all of you online and in the room. So we are looking at updating our long-range plan. I think I've got copies of the long-range plan here if anybody is interested in looking at it. The last time it was kind of reworked was 2020, but that wasn't a full update. So I'm not sure whether it'll happen this year or next year that we will really do a full updating with the new information from the Ag Census that just came out. But we want to make sure that we're keeping up to date on what our priorities are, what are the issues in our county or in our area, and where our priorities are for funding. So in the current plan, the major issues identified are water quality, and that includes sediment, temperature, nutrients, and aquatic habitat, forest health, including stand composition, vigor and density, wetland and riparian habitat loss and restoration, and weed management in the context of pasture land and forest land. So I will give a couple minutes now if anybody has any thoughts on what important issues you think we might be missing there. We did get some good feedback from our Sayusla local work group meeting back in January, so I'll be updating that. Trying to think offhand. I think wildfire we added to the forest health concern. Water quality, we were talking about algae, I think, and something else. I'm blanking on it right now. Are there any other major issues that you all can think of?
I think what seems top of mind for me when I was thinking about the meeting is the forest health portfolio there, and whether fire resiliency is part of that stand composition,
right,
and density. I think FSA does have a disaster relief program too that that landowners would be eligible for recovery from ice storm. But for what things, I'm not sure. I don't think I've seen an application for that from the county.
Yeah,
kind of have to send a test board up maybe and see if that flew. But the impacts seem to enhance fire nature for the next 5 years.
right.
So
all that down material.
Yeah, it's gonna die and dry out, and the top's going out of a lot of trees. And I don't know if it would be helpful. I forget who it was at OSU that studied the impacts in 2017 in Benton County from that.
From that ice storm.
To see what if they were able to quantify that and what landowners decided to do, and if they got any help with that. But more and more landowners I talk to, maybe it's just since 2020 really, is they're concerned about fire resilience, and that kind of work doesn't generate revenue.
Right.
It just generates costs.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's just a lot of
work.
And so you can do that work and feel better, sleep better at night, or you can kind of cross your fingers and just hope
the big one doesn't hit us.
Big one doesn't hit us before this thing gets harvested or something.
Right.
So anyway, that's in a nutshell is the highest thing that's top of mind, just because that ice storm just happened and I just drove here seeing all the damage. It's a big mess. It's not an unmitigated disaster, but it's going to enhance fire.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I did receive from Samantha Buckley an initial damage assessment, and I don't know who else received that, but they had a threshold that the county had to reach in order to petition for FEMA regional funding.
Oh, this isn't FEMA though. This is a
Yeah.
This is FSA thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
The
guess
FEMA
that's
one
the
would be
only
hard to
one.
qualify. Yeah, that would be hard.
That's the one they sent out to agencies to get numbers, basically. Just makes it difficult in a week turnaround for us to get the information from partners about quantify.
And how to quantify it,
costs.
right?
Samantha's our county emergency management person, and yeah, they sent out some queries about impacts, but a lot of that and that feedback, I'd imagine, had to be very just sort of subjective and not, it's not comprehensive. How do you even survey for it?
Nobody has, those kind of surveys even, yeah. It looks like Evan has his hand raised.
Yeah, can you hear me, Annie?
Yes.
Yeah, so I know just looking at that list, the water quality sediment is on there, but I know all you and Tyler and I and others have been out to look at like bank stabilization projects, and I think those got pulled out of EQIP or just not a part of that. And I think that, that technique of doing big bank pullbacks, or even like it gets towards, floodplain restoration and inset floodplain type work. Is there any chance to tweak those or add that in, or any work to kind of get those things back as, something that's fundable?
Yeah, those kind of projects are fundable, and that's something that we've included in that strategy that we have down in Lane County, the Sayusla floodplain restoration. Some of those projects really are doing, removing dikes, bank pullbacks, whole floodplain restoration kind of thing. So it's a possibility. Those, as you know, those kind of projects are very expensive and require a lot of permitting and design and stuff. So it gets complicated, but it's doable. It's just making sure that we have, multiple partners on board to kind of help it along, and NRCS can put some funding toward it. And then we usually have to get some other funding from other sources, because landowners can't really front all the rest of it to get those kind of big projects on the ground. But it's definitely, it's definitely an opportunity. And I think that's a good point to make sure that we're highlighting that in the water quality and habitat, I guess. Yeah,
it really kind of fits both bills. It's helping landowners, kind of arrest erosion and stop losing their bank, but you can also get a great big habitat benefit out of it, both in stream and in the riparian area. So that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. Any other thoughts from those online or here in the room? I do have a little prompt here. So if you could get one thing funded or accomplished by NRCS in the next year, what would it be? So this is, thinking about the idea that there's a ton of work to do. We all, can have a whole laundry list of everything that we would like to do, but how do we actually narrow that down to, I'm one person, I can do so many contracts in a year. What do we really want to be focusing on?
I guess weed management, to me, is there anything for pest management, just like as a broader category, like bugs and fungus and elk and
those vertebrate pests.
I know Evie and I really are looking for funding on elk fencing.
Yeah, that's something that we have not been able to help with. Pest management, in the context of like cropland, we can help folks develop, integrated pest management strategies to deal with pests, and coming up with a plan for that to, mitigate, risk of pesticide, off target impacts and other things. But it's a bit more limited of what we can really offer on that front.
The responsible agencies start mixing, but the ones I hear about are always elk and canopies. Every producer meeting I'm at, somebody gripes about canopies and elk. It's very consistent.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a need there, but tools are available through NRCS for help with that. It's really an ODM start point, I think.
Tyler, what if people got goats on one side to fence out the elk on the other side, something that was paid for on the farm side of it, but that would do double as an elk keeper outer?
That's what we're kind of trying to do, is this elk friendly livestock exclusion fencing. So, you know, the Sayusla does have some examples of that where they basically have these leaks that the elk can get across, but then the livestock can't. So
yeah, we have that problem. Right now, I don't have livestock that has a problem, but we have my whole life. And so we have, you know, the elk knock down all the fences, the horses get out, the cows get out constantly. So we've got 4x4s along the whole top of them. They can see them. And when they hit them, they know, and they kind of have stopped taking down the fences.
Yeah.
So it's work. There's some ways to work.
Yeah, there's ways to do
They
it.
can see them and they stop. I've also destroyed my garden, jumped over it, and I had to put my garden. But first, wait, is there? I mean, I live in an elk herd. But yeah, it's the same thing with like keeping the cows out of the creek. We, you know, had to put anyway. But yeah, they just go right through those fences if they're not.
Yeah,
They get stuck.
especially new fences, if they're not used to them.
They're not
being
used to
there.
them, and
Like
those-
you really have to make them super visible.
And that's
so-
probably why our main divider with all the 4x4 on top finally works, because we have had it for, you know,
Now they know it's there and can go around it.
almost 100 years, probably the same spot.
Yeah. Katie, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say, as far as your question about one thing to get accomplished and funded by NRCS, I mean, in addition to all the equip assistance that we've gotten for our SAA program, one thing I was going to add is that after this, Tyler and I are going to meet back up and talk about maybe seeking out some CREP funding for our upper Equina SAA technical assistance, which I've done a little bit of looking over the process for that so far, but that is a new style of application to me so far. So I might be reaching out to you about that sometime in the near future.
Yeah.
But
And we can hook you up with other districts who've applied, you know, successfully applied for that and been, you know, managing that program to give them a better idea of.
The 6 active contracts we have, or did you generate those?
No,
They're
well,
legacy.
one of them was actually Mid-Coast Watershed Council worked with them.
Okay.
And I kind of came in right when they were to the point of like signing a contract, but Mid-Coast did all of the planning and the actual planting and have been maintaining it. The other ones are all legacy, were around before I got here.
Does your office have to monitor this? Does it take a long time?
No, there's really not much workload for me. You know, those contracts require a mid-management practice. So sometime around either the 6th year for a 10-year contract or a little bit later for a 15-year contract, they have to do some kind of activity, whether it's, you know, a lot of people put up some kind of like bird boxes or wildlife, you know, habitat boxes, or if it needs it, you could go back in and do some like creating openings or doing a little bit of thinning or maybe replanting if you had an area that, you know, didn't establish well. So there's a variety of activities that they can choose to do. And I just have to go out and certify that. But, you know, I've only done 2 contracts since I've been here. So it's.
Seems like maybe a case where like maybe the district can help you help us. That funding source we initiated.
Yeah. Yeah, really, it's just working with landowner, you know, getting willing landowners, getting a plan together of what they would like to do and coming up with the planting plan and all of that. And then whether they actually do the planting themselves or you get, you know, some help from the district or some other, you know, from the Watershed Council to do some of the planting and the maintenance, going back and doing weed maintenance around them for a couple of years to really get them well established.
I'm not sure where it lands, but you know, the private forest court has been a topic at each of the landowner meetings over the last year and a half. And we're kind of seeing how that's going to shake out in terms of that actual buffer limits and things like that. And one of the discussions was looking at, well, if that's not going to be harvested, could it be an easement along the riparian areas? And if that might be a source of landowner interest in creating easements, and you know, whether NRCS could help line up, you know, partners for that or create that under one of the programs.
Yeah.
I'd imagine, I mean, they'd probably be open to like permanent easements and stuff in this.
Mhm.
I mean, I know it's a new rule, but
I think, well, so ODFW has some kind of a program for like the tax
yeah, there's a special tax assessment.
for that.
Right, well,
Short period of time.
Or yeah.
there's a
Uh-huh.
wetlands one too.
Mhm.
Um,
And then ODF has some programs for if they agree not to harvest that area for, I don't know what it is, 50 years or something like that, then there's some kind of compensation they can get for that. It doesn't fit into CREP because that's more pasture land or agricultural land.
and the
That's-
contracts, they're probably on over an entire tax lot or something. Is it?
No,
No, you
it could
draw
be,
a
yeah, you draw the polygon where you want to, where it makes sense. I think we could do some, through our forestry programs, we might be able to do some help with any kind of management that's needed in those areas, but I don't know that we have an easement program that really fits for that right now. We got a new
Yeah.
farm bill coming next year, and who knows what that's gonna look like.
Under the old rules, landowners had other options. There's things like hardwood conversion for some of those that landowners were utilizing.
Yeah.
Through ODF, and also like variable retention schemes, which you could go in and take, you're leaving a certain amount of stone diameter out there. But it looks like, I don't know, I read, I don't know how many versions of the rules. Interpretations of those.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused, so maybe don't take it all. But it looks like they're just not going to be able to touch a certain linear buffer around certain streams, and so they're wondering like, well, is there now a rationale to just have it in an easement and get some kind of and there are some tax incentives,
right,
and credits and things that are available through the state. Anyway, there's landlords are like looking, trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a program that seems to match that need, I guess, under the new regulatory scheme, and that might be helpful in getting some new cooperators. Maybe some of those areas higher in the watersheds that we've been trying to strategically focus on that we don't really touch because they're private or private industrial. Maybe we could. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's something to look at, figure out what might plug into those scenarios. So let's skip that. I did just want to touch real briefly on two projects that we kind of have in the hopper. I don't think anything's probably going to happen on them this year, but we've been continuing to have discussions with various partners about the possibility of a native Olympia oyster restoration program here in Oregon. There's something similar that's been happening with Washington NRCS for at least 10 years. They've been working primarily with an NGO called the Puget Sound Restoration Fund and with a lot of tribes up there to do that work. I think there's potential here and there's definitely interest, and we just haven't really had any partners step up and say, hey, we want to take the lead on this. Because I think this could be an opportunity that would fit real well with the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. There's similar programs like this on shellfish work, I think in Rhode Island and somewhere else on the East Coast. And those have been through RCPPs. I think that model could work well here too. But it's just sort of somebody, leading the charge, getting everybody together on the same page and saying, hey, what's the need? What do we really want to try to tackle? And how can we do that? There's definitely, I've heard of interest from our tribes, from Siletz and CT Clusie, from some of the watershed councils. I've talked with some folks at ODFW and Oregon Shores, and I know that there's researchers at OSU that have a lot of knowledge about this. So just kind of want to keep it in people's, thoughts and think about, what that could look like moving forward. But really kind of see, we need somebody that can actually be the organizer and the cheerleader for it. And so far, nobody's step up into that role. Everybody's pretty busy. Right.
The Aquina Bay has changed from a shallow estuary to a deep draft estuary, so the whole habitat, way it flows and functions is completely different when native oysters were here. In
right.
abundance. And if you don't have a hard substrate habitat for them to settle on, which there's not,
yeah,
and we've identified these few spots where there are, it would be a massive undertaking to be successful, but really it needs to have someone take a real deep dive into the past and future and what they need compared to other things, and see if there's even feasible. To get it.
Where are the spots that have the habitat requirements, and it's a big
with that whole sediment rain that comes from all the way up and coming down, and it's a monstrous undertaking. But it would be interesting.
So
have you talked to OCC Estuary Collaborative?
We brought it up.
I've mentioned,
Again, it's the same things. At this point, it's looking where you can make a difference now in other areas. It's trying to restore something like this, which would be difficult.
So it's out there still. We can keep on talking about it.
The Aquina Bay Estuary Management Plan.
Right.
Is that the same?
No.
Okay.
But it's, some of the same people tied into that planning effort too. So.
It doesn't, as far as I can tell, I haven't been to those meetings. It doesn't really seem like a funding source.
It's not.
No.
They're looking for funding sources.
Right. Yeah.
But when they want to,
but it is a framework, and it sets out targeted uses for different areas.
I don't think the shellfish thing would be consistent with a lot of partners' hopes for that plan, but having our plan, it just got published. But again, they're probably looking for funding.
And Tyler touched on this. This is the Siletz River source water protection area. So once that plan is finalized and they've got the outreach plan, then there's the possibility to apply for National Water Quality Initiative implementation funding. I don't know if we'll have that lined up and ready to apply for fiscal year 25, because I think the solicitation will be out soon. So it might be the following year, but that's fine. We got lots of other stuff we're working on now. So that's really all I had for that. But we're right at time. I'm sorry, we kind of got a late start and had lots of good discussion. If anybody has anything that they wanted to share real quickly here, we can do that. Otherwise, I will have the recording available. I'll send out notes to everybody. And if you think of anything else later or want to follow up on any of the discussion we had here, please feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, Annie. I feel like the priorities we set, I guess 2 years ago or last year, I can't think of changing those really. I think they're directionally correct. Just maybe the context has changed, or the wildfire danger being maybe the urgent one. But I don't know. Maybe we won't have a drought for the next. I think it's a drought.
We can hope.
Right. That seems truthy to me.
Yeah, and as we do update this strategic plan, I will also make that available for folks to review, comment on, add things to. So it's supposed to be a living document. It's not like we're gonna write it here and it's set in stone for the next 5 years or whatever. We can keep on updating and adding to it as we need to. All right. Thank you all very much for your time today. Appreciate those folks who joined us online too. Look forward to any ideas or questions you have. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's the campus I want to just found, that's a big